Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Schuh Show, a little earlier than usual because I'm flying to Seattle in a couple of hours. This is a very interesting week. Usually on these YouTube shows, like the off-season topics do a little bit better, even during the season. Who are they gonna trade? Who's coming back? All those little intrigue questions, not this week. From my data on YouTube, people aren't trying to talk about that. They're in the now, they're in the present. Seahawks are always an important game for the 49ers, an important rivalry game. And I don't think Niner fans are ever that confident heading into it. So let's do a huge Seahawks special, Rob.
Let's do it, Grant.
Yes. Glenn Ellen's finest. Well, your parents.
Yes.
Some of Glenn Ellen's finest.
We
just found out we had mutual friends. Because Glenn Ellen's not that big.
Small world.
It is. But we're not going to Glenn Ellen this weekend. We're going to Seattle. At least I am. You're already in the
Pacific there as well.
Northwest. Oh, nice. And this is sort of a reverse of the Niners-Rams matchup. In the Niners-Rams matchup, it really doesn't matter what either team's record is. The Niners are the big brother. Kyle Shanahan in particular is the big brother, and Sean McVay's the little brother. In this matchup, it's sort of like Russell Wilson's the big brother and the 49ers are the little brother. It's been that way. I think he's only lost to the Niners 3 times in 10 years. Kind of got a mental edge over him, huh?
Yes. The psychological edge. I don't think that you can underestimate that in any vein of life, right? It's true for us as non-NFL players, but certainly as you go into an NFL game, if you believe that for whatever reason, the opposing team has the edge, has that ability, has your number, you're putting yourself behind and down in distance from the outset, right? I mean, the mentality going into it. Russell Wilson is such a mentality guy. You can hear him on the sidelines when they mic him up before a game-winning drive. There's no one I've heard that's more confident. His voice when he's saying, we are gonna win, we are gonna get this. It's that confidence that they have over the 49ers, the same confidence that I believe the 49ers have exerted over the Rams. It seems to be the opposite for San Francisco when going up against Seattle. It seems that there are flashbacks none of these players have even been on when in the NFC Championship game, Richard Sherman stole our hearts. It seems to go back a long way.
Let me tell you what Russell Wilson's record is against the 49ers in the regular season.
Do it.
15-4. And let me tell you what Jimmy Garoppolo's record is against the Seahawks in the regular season. 1-4. So this is definitely a little brother, big brother matchup. I don't care that the Niners are hot and the Seahawks are not. One team has Russell Wilson. The other team has Jimmy Garoppolo. So I'm picking the team this week that has Jimmy Garoppolo, but not with confidence. And I feel like Niner fans are right there with us. Like, we better win. Niners better win. But, let's be clear. The Niners already lost to this team this year. The Seahawks have sucked. I'm going to use the word suck, the verb to suck, a lot today because that's what the Seahawks, that's the technical term for what they do. And they were sucking week 4. Niners still lost. Outgained them by 200 yards, lost by 6. So we'll see.
Yeah, that margin of victories for Wilson, that 4-to-1 ratio, and then the opposite for Jimmy, man, that is painful. That is real dominance. You don't see that all that often within the NFL for two teams that otherwise seem fairly balanced. That strikes me as a Pittsburgh Steeler over Cleveland Brown type of dominance. You know what I mean? That is really something to consider.
And it's surprising, like most people are talking about the Niners right now as like Super Bowl contenders. Hey, they figured it out. They've gotten back to their identity.
Hottest team in the NFL.
Hottest team in the NFL. And people talking about the Seahawks like they're dead. 3-8, so dysfunctional. But the line for this game in Vegas, can you guess?
2.5.
Niners -3. Niners -3. They're expecting a real close game. Kyle Shanahan's been saying all week this is going to come down to the final possession. That's you really don't blow out the Seahawks. It's going to come down to the final possession. And usually, if Russell Wilson has the ball last, you're screwed.
That's what I was just going to say. Is that for 49ers fans, that is a panic moment.
Right.
If what happened last week against the Washington football team happens against the 49ers, 2 minutes left, Russell Wilson gets the ball with a chance to tie or take the lead, my heart will be beating through my chest. I will be nervous as all get out. And I think fellow 49er faithful will be the same because we have had our hearts ripped from our chest by this team repeatedly.
watching that game when Russell Wilson got the ball with 2 minutes left, was there any doubt in your mind of what was going to happen next?
No, I thought for sure we were headed to overtime. I had recorded that game, and I thought to myself, well, I probably didn't add enough time onto this one.
Now, he missed the 2-point conversion, but really, if Nick Bellore had just lined up 2 feet to the right on the onside kick, they recovered it. I would think that probably Russell Wilson would have let him down the field again. Anyway, that's how close they were to winning, despite playing awful. Like, Russell Wilson can play terrible football for 3.5 quarters and win. I've seen him do it any number of times.
Yes.
He's like, Tim Tebow was like that, except Russell Wilson does it consistently. Almost every game. Oh, I'm playing really bad. No, I'm not. Still Russell Wilson. What, we won. I don't know how it happened. So
I did not expect to get a Tim Tebow, Russell Wilson reference into this show. I'm very impressed with that fact that you were able to weave that in.
That's high level stuff. I know.
You're very welcome.
Alexino has a question. Did you know, Rob, that your last name means shoe in German? Did you know that?
I did actually know that. The funny thing is, it goes one step further than that. Previous generations before someone shortened it, it was Schumacher. One of my great grandfathers was clearly a maker of shoes.
Your great grandfather was Adi Dassler. Is what we're you know who Adi Dassler is. He's the guy who made Adidas, and his brother Puma, and they had the little rivalry. You didn't know about that. That's
talented brotherhood.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what Adidas means. Is Adi Dassler. I think it's short for his name. Anyway, that's the most I know about Germans and German things and your name.
Yes.
Hey,
but I appreciate that people are educating themselves on what shoe means. They're like, what is this spelling? That's very strange.
It's true. Niners can't start slow like past games versus Seattle. Yeah, but the Seahawks start slow all the time, so maybe the Niners can start slow. I don't know. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would echo the idea that the 49ers' best chance at winning this game is to not allow the Seahawks to hang around because of that aspect of Russell Wilson in the last few minutes. You just don't want to give them hope. So for the 49ers to win this one, get out quickly, stay on top of them, and don't turn the ball over.
All right. This is a really interesting statistic to look at in this matchup. The time of possession disparity. Hit us with it.
Yeah, it is pretty wild to this point. It is 24 minutes for Seattle, meaning 36 minutes of time of possession for their opponents. So check this out. The Seahawks are worst in the league in time of possession, also worst in the league in offensive plays run and third down conversions. All of these shortcomings are longer in the tooth than Wilson's finger injury. So this has been an issue for them all year. Only twice this season has a team actually gone 3 and out on 5 consecutive drives. Both of those instances were the Seattle Seahawks. Once.
Yeah, they did it last week. Sorry, go ahead.
Last week. And then you already knew the other one because you said it this morning when we were talking against us, the San Francisco 49ers.
Why do I know so much about the Seahawks? I've been really following their slow demise, and it's kind of fascinating. Like the Niners. We all know the Niners are great with time of possession for the season. They have the ball for 52%, but the last 3 games, they've had the ball for 63.6% of their games. Like that's winning.
Holy moly.
There. Only team that's had more than them is Washington, who just played Seattle. Seattle is
that may flip-flop after this week.
They're last for the season and for the last 3. For the season, they're at 40% time of possession, and for the last 3 games, they're at 32.6%. Like they're not even on the field. They can't get Russell Wilson on the field. So even without Deebo Samuel, all the Niners got to do is pretty much do their thing and let the Seahawks do their thing, and the Niners will have the ball most of the game.
Yeah, that's the type of lopsided time of possession that is going to lead to greater injuries for offensive players, greater wear and tear for offensive players. I mean, that's the type of trend that builds on itself because each week your body is taking more and more physical abuse by being on the field as a defense for Seattle and just getting worn down. As far as statistical anomalies, this one goes back a ways. According to, this is of Field Yates from ESPN, only one team in the last 45 years has finished the season with under 25 minutes of average time of possession. That team was the 1999 Cleveland Browns, their expansion team start year.
They did not have a Hall of Fame quarterback. This is really bad for not I mean every coach on that team, but the offensive coordinator they brought in, first year dude, Shane Waldron. We're going to talk about him in a minute, but damn, Shane, how did you do this? How did you make the worst Seahawks offense ever? You have a Hall of Fame quarterback, and you're making it look like you got Blaine Gabbert over there. What happened, Shane?
It's wild. And even after a game that was so painful from Seattle last week, it doesn't seem that Pete Carroll is abandoning his new offensive coordinator. He said another thing in support of him, but you have to think that was just atrocious.
What's the alternative at this point?
Right.
I mean, how many offensive coordinators does he know? Let's talk about the dysfunction in Seattle, because it's widespread and it's kind of amazing. And I think this dynasty is over. So what is happening in Seattle? At least from my perspective, this is what I see. Tell me what you see.
Yes.
Let's start with Pete Carroll. I think we're seeing that this guy's done and probably was overrated the whole time. I think what we're seeing from him is he's Jeff Fisher. Remember Jeff Fisher?
Of course I do.
Okay. Jeff Fisher, Tennessee, won a lot of games and was looked at as a really good head coach. But in retrospect,
very respected.
In retrospect, it was Steve McNair. He had Steve McNair.
Yeah.
And, the offense that they had over there never really brought the most out of McNair. It was very much hand off to Eddie George and throw to some terrible wide receivers, and we're going to win with defense. And that's how Jeff Fisher built his reputation. Then he went to St. Louis and was a flop. And if Pete Carroll in his non-Russell Wilson years was a total flop, and the fact that he's flopping now with Russell Wilson is bad. So I'm thinking he's looking a lot like Jeff Fisher 2.0, a guy who, I don't know, had a good reputation from college and won a lot with a great quarterback, but wasn't a great coach. So there's that. I mean, also, we just mentioned his offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron. From what I heard, I got connections. The Rams were so surprised that the Seahawks wanted him. Like, this guy? Hey, take him. Like, the most replaceable dude in here. So I don't know what intel Pete Carroll thought he had, but you didn't know Shane Waldron. The Rams knew Shane Waldron. They didn't care about Shane Waldron. You signed him. He'd never been a coordinator or called to play, and now you have the worst time of possession in the league. Can't get the ball to DK Metcalf. That's a joke. And they've had a lot of injuries and stuff. I mean, Russell Wilson's missed time. They're down to Adrian Peterson at running back. So that's part of it. But really, one more thing. They freaking stink at drafting. They really are bad. They used to be good 10 years ago, but all those players are guys that they've, signed, Bobby Wagner, Russell Wilson, and now they have to replenish with other young players who are cheap and good. They don't have them.
Cheap, yeah.
They don't have them. They have Jamal Adams, who's their first round pick next year too, who's, he's all right. He's not great. So that's kind of bad drafting, an overrated coach. And let's talk about Russell Wilson. Yeah, he's got a broken finger and that's hurting him, but he was struggling going back to the second half of last year. It seems like, one, he's not nearly as athletic as he used to be. He's kind of slowed down a little bit. And two, I think the league is kind of caught up to his style of play. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has struggled with this as well. Josh Allen. Defenses are like, you know what? 2 safeties high, no big plays. Forget that. Check it down, Russell. And he won't. And it seems like teams have actually finally caught it. This has been going on since last year. So that's went on for 5 minutes, but that's a lot of stuff that's going on with the Seahawks. I think they got to blow it up.
It's a lot of dysfunction, and I love hearing it. So that was all music to my ears, Grant. I could listen to that for 15 more minutes if you got anything. Like, that's just glorious. I agree with Wilson, and Jason Aponte was saying on my show earlier this week that he sort of has this refusal not to throw the deep ball. And I had to credit him. That guy throws one of the prettiest deep balls I've seen. So I don't blame him for wanting to put that on national television every chance that he gets. It's so catchable. But you're right. Defenses have absolutely adjusted to this big shot play offense. They're now taking that away. And that's
Mahomes
what the NFL
having the same
does.
issue with Kansas City, right?
Right.
It's a whole talking point in the league.
Yes. Yeah. It is the too high, take away that big play and force them to play a style that they're not used to. Force them out of their comfort zone. And for a couple of teams, they've been unable to respond. Seattle seems to be chief among those as to ones that haven't. To your point on Shane Waldron, he's clearly not put it together for that Seattle offense. They had 5 straight 3-and-outs in the performance last week. I mean, 5 straight 3-and-outs against the Washington football team. That is a brutal offense. 12 carries for 34 yards. And Pete Carroll, you got to love him. He said, well, I don't want to use the excuse of missing Chris Carson, but we're missing Chris Carson. It was like, I don't want to leave that as the excuse, but that's our excuse.
But I'm using the injury excuse.
Yeah, 100%.
Bob Money says he can't throw that deep ball because of their finger, and he doesn't want to be in Seattle anymore. Yeah, that's the one more thing. He requested a trade or said he wouldn't be against a trade.
He
and
wanted
here's
out.
Teams I'd like to go to. He did that, right? He basically said, this offensive line is trash. It's shortening my career. And here are 4 teams I wouldn't be opposed to going to. So it does seem like he doesn't even want to be there anymore.
Yeah, he laid out, me and Rihanna are a power couple. These are the cities we would like to reside in.
Not
Seattle.
Rihanna, Ciara.
I get my stuff mixed up. I'm not hip.
Their songs are totally different.
They absolutely want to be in New York, LA, the power markets.
Chicago, New Orleans, whatever. Yeah, absolutely. So it seems like no one either wants to be, or whoever's there this year is not going to be there next year. And everyone kind of feels it. And what's the other? They're 3-8. That's pretty dysfunctional. 3-8.
3 losses in a row to match our 3-game win streak. Wilson, in his return, 54 of 106. 51% completion percentage over the last 3 games.
He does have a messed up finger, and you'll see he will miss throws that he used to nail.
That's what I want to ask is do you think, because this is my take, that Russell Wilson will have a bounce back game at some point. It seems inevitable that he will get right at some point this season. He's just too good not to. Yeah. My fear is that he'll be motivated to have that game against the 49ers.
And his finger will be a little bit better than last week. I don't know. Yeah, it could be. At some point, the finger should be. I don't know. I mean, I feel like he's too good, even if he's apathetic, even if he doesn't want to be there, even if his finger's messed up, even if he's a little bit older. Still Russell Wilson, man. And I've only seen him beat the Niners, I guess, 4 times. I don't even remember the 4th time. I mean, he won in Candlestick a couple of times. He lost in Candlestick a couple of times. I'm trying to say anyway. It's like I got to see it to believe it, I guess. I got to see it to believe it. Yeah.
Yes. I need the Niners to be up by multiple scores by the 4th quarter so that I'm not in the stands fretting.
Let's talk about the Adrian Peterson effect.
All day.
Was it 2 years ago that the Seahawks signed Marshawn Lynch out of retirement for the last game, and then he committed a penalty and they lost on the last play? That was great. So anyway,
they were like, you got to go in, but you come out. Wait, go back in.
Where's my helmet? So that was the Marshawn Lynch effect. It was great. Now we talk the Adrian Peterson effect. The Seahawks are a run-first team because, as I mentioned, Pete Carroll is basically Jeff Fisher 2.0, and he wants to run. He wants to hand off to Eddie George a million times like it's 1997, and they don't have that running back anymore. Chris Carson's out. Alex Collins it's terrible. So they got Adrian Peterson, who was phenomenal 10 years ago, 6 years ago. What do you think the Adrian Peterson effect will be in this game?
Yeah, it needs to be something for Seattle because as head coach Pete Carroll said, he doesn't want to use the excuse, but then he used the excuse of Chris Carson is out, and that's been the difference. The Seahawks have did rush for 105 yards or more in those in 3 of the 4 first games with Chris Carson. So there's some validity to the idea that he was able to have some success within this rushing attack. But they've rushed for more than 100 just once since then and under 90 in the last 5. So certainly without Chris Carson, no one else has been able to step up. Last week, Alex Collins was atrocious. I want to say it was something like 7 carries for 14 yards. It was not pretty. But Adrian Peterson, what does he have left in the tank at this point? I don't see him as a big burst guy. I see him as a 3.5 yard per carry type of guy. That's what I see.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. I guess Frank Gore wasn't available. Is Adrian Peterson better than Frank Gore at this point? I don't know. I guess this is the only effect I could see. Pete Carroll wants to run the ball just because that's how he wins. So this will give him an excuse to run the ball a lot. And I don't know if it'll help the Seahawks, but I know that their offensive line isn't built to pass protect. And I don't know if they're built to do anything per se.
Right.
But it seems like
Carroll does seem to understand that running the ball is effective. He pointed, not just effective, but is the key to getting them back on track. He pointed out what Washington was able to do against them last week as evidence for them needing to be able to step it up. So clearly he knows that they need to get something
Washington
started.
has Taylor Heineke and has every reason to take the game out of his hands. And the Seahawks have Russell Wilson. And you're going to now use Adrian Peterson as an excuse to take the ball out of Russell Wilson's hand. Every time Russell Wilson hands off to Adrian Peterson, don't you think the Niners are like, nice, thank you.
Win.
Keep giving it to that guy. Keep giving it to 30. How old is he? 30-11? 30-12?
Yeah, 30-12 sounds right.
30-12 is roughly how old he is. Who'll have a bigger game, Kittle or Aiyuk? I like this. I like this. This is a bonus topic. Bonus topic. I like this. I got. Go ahead. Who will have a bigger game, Kittle or Aiyuk?
My prediction will be George Kittle, because I think that this is the time to get Kittle rolling. You have to fill in for the lack of production that you're missing for Deebo. I know we'll hit that topic in a little bit, but we'll hit it from a different angle. This one, to me, you've got to get George Kittle involved in this offense. If this team is going to make a deep playoff run, they are going to need more of their stars on offense to step up. And George Kittle is the emotional leader of the offense when he's rolling. And he provides some of that through his stellar run blocking, through his pancakes, through his elation in physically manhandling defenders. But without the extended first down celebrations and getting jovial with a 100-yard receiving game, it's just not the same. So I think you've got to get George Kittle rolling.
Yeah. I think he's hurt, though. He had that calf injury. He was on IR. They don't talk about it anymore, but the way they use him makes me feel like he's injured. And they're trying to preserve him and not have a setback, keep him healthy, and maybe unleash him in the playoffs if they get there, which they probably will. So I don't really expect it to be Kittle. I mean, I think he's going to get more catches for sure. What do you have last week? 1, 2, 2?
Something like that.
Yeah. 1. He had 1. So I think he'll get, maybe 3, 4. But I think it's going to be Aiyuk, because Ayuk's the one who's healthy. Ayuk's the one who's hot too. I think the last 4 games, Jimmy's quarterback rating when targeting Aiyuk is like 140. So not hurt, hasn't gotten paid yet, has something to prove. Was in the doghouse for a while, so he's fresh. I think we're going to see Ayuk's hot streak continue. It's not like you got to ask Aiyuk to pick it up. You got to ask him to sort of stay hot. With Kittle, you're saying, hey, man, you got to get hot. And I don't know if that's going to happen.
Let me ask for your observation on Aiyuk, because I feel like I've seen his yards of separation just skyrocket, right? When he started the year, everyone pointed to that as well, evidence that he wasn't just in the doghouse. He wasn't getting open because the yards of separation just were non-existent early in the season. Yeah. Now they appear to be skewing towards
man-to-man coverage. He's beating man-to-man coverage. I mean, it's hard to say why. I mean, you either do or you don't. I always felt like he had the ability to do it, and I don't know. I guess he's getting more open now. You know who doesn't seem to be getting as open as he did in the past? George Kittle. Now there was that famous clip on the second play from this last week where he's wide open over the middle, but that's just him running through a void that linebackers vacated because of play action. Like, we're talking beating man-to-man coverage. I don't think he's as good at it as he was in the past. He was just impossible to cover, at tight end. Now, I think Ayuk's getting more separation. I do. I think that's why he's getting the ball.
Do you think Kittle has shifted his body type in trying to become more physical, in attempting to keep himself from getting injured?
No. I think he's actually lost weight to try to be more durable, because he's injured himself running, and I think it hasn't worked, and he's injured again. He's got a calf injury they don't talk about, and they're managing, but he's got a calf injury, and he moves like a guy who's not 100%. To me, I remember in 2018 against the Chargers, late in the game, he just caught a pass and ran through the whole defense. Gone.
Yeah.
You don't really see him pull away from defenders anymore like he used to, like Deebo does. Because if he could, I mean, forget Deebo. I mean, that's what Kittle used to do, that kind of stuff after the catch. And now it's like, that's a nice 10-yard catch from from Kittle. That's a nice 10-yard catch, but that's pretty much, maybe you'll see a 20-yard catch here and there. I
I'm
don't know.
not seeing those plays that scheme him wide open as much either. I feel like Kyle sometimes shifts his spotlight to a different player, and right now it's all over Deebo Samuel. It will be interesting to see which one he picks and shines the light on brightest in Seattle.
Alien Jazz Party says, when is Lowell Cohn coming back? Sending positive vibes to Lowell. Message from Daryl from London. Well, thank you, Daryl from London. I hope my dad comes back January. He's 100% okay. Don't worry about it. It's just kind of a tough time in the family. So thank you. Appreciate the positive vibes. He appreciates them too. I think he's watching right now. I would hope.
Nothing but positive vibes.
Yeah. So and when he does come back, we'll explain the whole thing. How about that? All right. Getting back to Seattle. Niner fans want to know about this team. How bad is their defensive line?
It struck me, everyone in my mentions was throwing out that, yeah, we're going to be able to run all over them, that this sets up perfectly. And I think people assume that because of that lopsided time of possession. But as I dug into it, it's really not as terrible as one would think. What they're actually really bad against is against the pass. And looking at passing yardage, the number of yards that they've given up relative to the number of yards they've thrown for themselves, that's what's really skewed. They've given up almost 50% greater yards receiving to opponents as opposed to what they've been able to put up themselves. And so it strikes me that this sets up to be a game where you may want Jimmy to throw more passes, but I am a little PTSD about that when we shift that game plan is when we tend to get out of whack, when we tend to get into a very pass heavy mode and forget what our identity is. So it sets up for one of my fears that we will come out, pass the ball more than we need to, turn the ball over more than we should, and not run the ball down their throats as I think we can.
I think the best game plan, defensive game plan we've seen against Kyle Shanahan throughout the years is what the Cardinals do, Vance Joseph. And I think what Pete Carroll did earlier this season, which is first drive, just show sort of like a specialty defensive front that is totally sold out to stop the run. Like hey, we're going to play 6 defensive linemen because we don't respect your passing game. And you just make a statement. You're not going to run on us today. And Kyle will look at that and say, okay, well, we have to pass. And he will. And what you can do is get the 49ers to abandon their identity. And although Kyle say like, well, we had to, and the passing worked, and they just have to execute and yada, 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 the Niners don't execute passes as well, from the blocking to the throwing to the catching, the whole thing. And so that worked for Arizona twice. They showed it, and the Niners abandoned their running game and lost, even though Jimmy had a good game in the second. He played well. It was Aiyuk who fumbled and Kittle who fumbled. Right. And then also in this game, like against Seattle, they came out with a heavy run front. The Niners basically passed every single play, had a beautiful touchdown drive on the first possession of the game, but there was a lot of dropping back. Jimmy Garoppolo just happened to get hit, happened to get hurt, and the game went to crap, and they lost. So be interesting to see if Seattle can get the Niners to blink. It's kind of how I think of it. Like, are you going to blink? Because then there's no reason for the Niners to abandon what they do against this crap team. I'm sorry, they're a crap team.
There's not. And I would say it's almost as if opposing coaches bait Kyle into that approach, because he doesn't respond with, oh, well, they're in this front and we can't. What happens in his mind is he sees an advantage. He sees, oh, well, the way to attack this defensive front is, and then he abandons, right? He abandons the run. And to me, again,
let's take what the defense gives you, but what you're doing is allowing the defense to dictate. To you, and you need you as an offensive play caller. You need to dictate to the deep. You can't let them take away your strength. You can't let them ever do that.
That's right. If it is your strength, then you stick to it. You dictate to them what they need to do in response to it. I thought against Minnesota, Kyle was headed down that path, and then Jimmy woke him up by throwing that interception. And Kyle was like, oh, right. Let me get back to the run. That was almost a fortunate interception that we threw because it brought us back to the run game.
That's true. Absolutely. When he was calling that drive, I'm like, okay, the Niners are going to lose this game. They're doing it again. And then he threw the pick and Kyle got back. It's like, okay, all right. Well, I wonder what their record would be like right now if they had done this all season. I still don't really understand what the Niners were doing in September and October, but we're in December now. And it's important to remember that this Seahawks D-line is not that bad. The Seahawks do have an ability to play the run well, the Niners run game well, and to force them into plan B, which is Jimmy win the game. So curious to see if they can do it again.
They don't get after the passer all that well, but to your point of where we struggle, our offensive line can make defensive lines look a little bit better when they're having a bad game.
All right, let's talk Trey Lance. Trey Lance has played extensively in 2 games this season. One against Arizona when he started in the week before when he came in for the second half against Seattle. As I mentioned earlier, Jimmy Garoppolo 1-4 against the Seahawks. Gotten hurt the last 2 times he played him. You know how he has the Rams number. He has the Cardinals number. He's done well against these teams. And you can feel confident going into the game. Like he's won, he's played well, he's going to continue to play well. Seattle's different. It's like Minnesota, but worse. They really seem to have his number. They've played him a lot. They have a good defensive coach that can build a game plan to take away his strengths. And if that happens in this game, I mean, do you think the Niners owe it to themselves, especially with Deebo Samuel out, to find a way to get Trey Lance in this game? Or is that just going to complicate matters? Is it only going to make their offense more disjointed?
You could see it both ways. First, I'll touch on my belief that Jimmy Garoppolo is a confidence-based quarterback. I don't see his ability to generate that confidence from within him as Russell Wilson does when he's down, that he can just psych himself up, psych the entire team up. I believe Jimmy feeds off of the confidence of others, and therefore going into a game where many players may have this little brother syndrome in the back of their minds, you wonder if he will have the confidence needed headed into this one. It could complicate the game to get Trey Lance involved. Kyle Shanahan has admitted as much, that what he claims to be the issue this year is I did not understand how much it would mess with my rhythm as a play caller to put him in. It strikes me that you may not fully believe that, but I thought it was endearing to have Kyle admit fault. Whether it was true or not, just to have a mea culpa moment was refreshing for me.
I think from Kyle's perspective, everything he says is true, but it's not necessarily the main reason. I mean, he found a football reason to give, but there's a lot of things going on in this organization, and not all of it is football related.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's a reason. It's a reason.
Yes.
Maybe he could pass that lie detector test. I think he might. I think he can.
He can convince himself of these things.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
can lie to myself long enough to believe something. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Niner fans do it every year. Just kidding.
It does. Yes. It seems I lied to myself at the beginning of the season, but the season has turned around, Grant. My lies are becoming reality, which is
so hold on. No, let's come back to Lance. He hasn't played in a while. This is a game where you'd think, you don't need him, right? It's the Seattle Seahawks.
Right.
Is he going to be in the game plan, or is he going to have to come in out of necessity, or neither? Is this going to be
I would hope neither. It sets up to be a game that the 49ers should win. They have been on a long enough winning streak that I have to believe it would have to get really ugly in order for Trey to come in out of necessity. It would be interesting for me to see him in a series of plays that are designed to take advantage of this Seattle defense that is somewhat suspect, especially if we can take some shot plays. The one area that I really expected to see Lance in was in between the 40s when you had 2nd and short, 3rd and short, where bringing in a mobile quarterback who's capable of operating play action creates incredible, and can take a deep shot, which is the important difference between he and Jimmy in some respects, puts so much stress on a defense that it's criminal not to force them into that situation, not to take advantage of it, especially for a play caller like Kyle Shanahan, who loves to put defenses in stressful situations that force them to play scared and on their back feet instead of on their toes.
This is the way I remember it. I've seen Pete Carroll do this to coaches. Like to quarterbacks. The more he sees you, the better he does. He did this to Alex Smith. I mean, there was a point where Alex Smith in the Niners offense couldn't score more than 13 points against it. It was just nothing they could do. They suffocated the Alex Smith offense. They had their number. It was over. And as soon as they made the switch to Colin Kaepernick, I mean, Pete Carroll got him down eventually too, but not for a while. It was like all of a sudden the offense was totally different. All the principles that Pete Carroll used to snuff out the Alex Smith offense no longer applied. And it turned the whole mashup on its head.
Right.
And really, Alex Smith was Colin Kaepernick was the whole offense a lot of times against Seattle. So I just think if you see that situation, like, here we go, another game where Pete Carroll just has Jimmy's number and Jimmy's not looking confident or effective and he's not in rhythm, he's getting hit. Well, you do have another quarterback on the bench who's totally different. And all the things that they've been practicing this week to stop this offense won't apply to stop that offense. It's kind of a playoff game. I feel like every game going forward, the Niners can't afford to lose this game.
No.
So I'm just saying it might be a little wrinkle that could win the game if you're on the verge of losing a game you shouldn't lose.
Yeah, let me ask you this, because I don't think Kyle will come in with that expectation that he's going to need to make that shift, but it could be in the back of his mind. How would it need to play out in your mind? Where would we be in the game? How far down would we need to be? How ugly would it need to get in order to make that switch? Because Kyle seems very reticent to do that. That would undo a lot of the win streak we're on, a lot of the positive momentum. We'd be back into chaos at that point.
What if the first half unfolds a lot like it did week 4, where the offense is struggling? Jimmy's not playing well. And what if Jimmy turns the ball over in the first half and they go into halftime with 3-6 points, something like that? And you're thinking, why is this going to get better in the second half? Jimmy's really struggled for, how many consecutive quarters against Seattle is he? Why is this going to get? Maybe we need to make a change to win this game. And you know what they could do? They could do what they did week 4. I'm not saying they just say, hey, he's hurt, whether he is or he isn't. Maybe he probably was hurt. But he said, hey, Jimmy, you're hurt. Because we don't want to hurt your trade value. We might want you to play next week. But Seattle has your number. We got to win this game. We don't think you're going to win it. You're hurt. So that's the story. I don't know. Back spasms.
Yeah. It could be. I would think it would have to get really ugly for that to happen. The offense would need to be really inefficient for him to pull the trigger because of the domino effect that would take place. I mean, I'm sure running through his mind would be, oh man, I'm going to get some real questions from Grant at the end of this game if he switches to Trey Lance. So he's got to know that it would open up a lot of speculation. A lot of 49er fans' fears would be rushing to their forefront of their mind. It would hurt Jimmy's trade value. So many things start to go wrong if he does it, that I think we'd have to be in a real bind in order to pull that parachute.
I'll tell you something, though. If the game looks like Jimmy's going to lose it and all of a sudden they make the switch and Trey Lance wins it, people feel pretty good about it.
Yes.
Just going to say.
I would love it.
Just going to say.
I'm a fan of storylines.
Sean Dunn says Kittle has been crucial in all Seattle games due to Seattle linebackers being terrible in coverage. Expect him to be big on third down. If we can run down their throat, then Kittle can rest the calf. Dwelly TD first game. Dwelly time. Yeah, Kittle, Dwelly, Juszczyk, Aiyuk, those 4, and the running backs all got to be big.
Do you think Bobby Wagner has lost a step at this point?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly. But so is Kittle.
Fair point.
Sorry. I don't see Kyle playing Trey unless Jimmy is playing horrible in a playoff game. Well, I kind of feel like this is a playoff game. You can't lose this game. If the Niners go into Seattle and lose the 3-8 Seattle, it's not like they'll be like, hey, well, it was just a game, one game. No, now you've lost 2 games to a terrible team that only has 2 other wins against the rest of the league, and now you're 6-6 again.
Yeah,
and
back
you don't
to
really
500.
know where No, it's not good. And actually, everyone's going to call you a pretender if you do that. And you probably look at yourself in the mirror and think, pretender.
Think of how fervent all the fans have been this week about beating Seattle. I mean, beating Seattle is big for the 49er faithful. They absolutely cherish these games, and it means a lot to beat them, and it stings when we lose. I mean, fans get upset. The storyline of this season from one of the hottest teams in the NFL would change rapidly if we drop this game.
MM says, my tinfoil hat theory, Shannon Lynch leaked the Jimmy trade news to keep his feet to the fire for the stretch run. He's only really played well this year when one more bad throw away from losing his job. Interesting. I don't have that theory, but it's interesting. I can see why you would go there.
Yeah, it's fair to speculate.
It is fun to speculate. I have other theories. All right. We just talked about this a little bit, but real quick, how long is Jimmy Garoppolo's leash? It sounds like an absurd question because he's playing a great stretch of football. He should have a long leash, but I'm not sure he does. As I mentioned before, this is kind of a playoff game, and the Seahawks have shown that they have his number. I was watching the Saints on Thursday Night Football, and I'm watching Taysom Hill, and I'm thinking, this is your Waterloo, buddy. This is it. all the hopes and dreams that people had for you and that organization or wherever is over. You're not a quarterback, and
Brutal.
everyone knows it, and you're not going to get another chance. You threw 4 picks. That has nothing to do with, your mechanics or learning. That's just, you cannot be trusted to make decisions at quarterback. You're done. You're done. That was your Waterloo. And Jimmy's Waterloo is going to come eventually in San Francisco. It's either going to be in a playoff game that he loses or some bad loss down the stretch that he should win. And again, like in Seattle, that could be his Waterloo. And if it's going like it went week 4, I think he's going to have a short leash. I'm expecting Kyle Shanahan to not mess around. I mean, I know the organization wants to trade Jimmy Garoppolo and not jeopardize that, but they already did jeopardize it by trading for his replacement last year. And there's no secret that Kyle Shanahan wants to move on. And if Jimmy Garoppolo pushes him to the brink, I don't think Kyle Shanahan will blink on that one.
And let's be honest, that his trade value, I think, is pretty fixed at this point. Unless he go,
if he has any.
Yeah, right. That people know who Jimmy is, and that's inconsistent, and why the 49ers were willing to give up so much in order to move on from him. So I don't know that it would hurt his trade value terribly if he just proved to be inconsistent more. I would say that I think his leash is a long one at this point. I think that you would be able to drop this game and head into the next one with a bad performance before it would really change the tide, because Kyle is riding high on the 49ers being the hottest team in the NFL right now. That national narrative that is turned around, that the 49ers are back. You could sustain one loss, especially if he quoted Pete Carroll and saying, well, I don't want to use the excuse of Deebo Samuel and Fred Warner being out, but Deebo Samuel and Fred Warner were out.
Can we talk about that trade value real quick? I've been talking about it all week, and I want to get your perspective. I don't really think he has trade value. To me, it's not that he's not good. It's the contract. He's gonna be a free agent in 2023. So he's got 1 year. He's basically, it's an expiring deal. 1 year left, and it's expensive, $27 million. So the difficulty is not trading Jimmy; it's trading that contract. It seems to me any team that might be interested in him, and I don't know how many would be because he's quite limited. But any team that would be interested in getting him as opposed to drafting a quarterback, which is a better option, couldn't you be like, hey, we'll just wait a year. We can get him in free agency next year and not give up a draft pick and not spend $27 million. Like, what team out there is going to say, no, I want to be first to Jimmy. I'm going to give up that draft pick and give him an extension so no one else can get Jimmy. I want Jimmy Garoppolo. That market doesn't exist. A lot of teams might be, yeah, I like Jimmy. Next year, when I can sign him for what he's really worth, I'm just saying, the issue is trading the contract.
Yes, that's a fair point. I would say I think you're maybe overlooking just how desperate bad teams get in the NFL. That
it's going to take desperation.
Yes, there are head coaches, there are GMs who are on their last legs, who are going to try anything to save their next season. And Jimmy's a glimmer of hope. Jimmy is the underperforming underdog quarterback that fan bases could wrap their arms around and like him because he's, a blue collar guy and he's handsome and he would give them
that winning record.
Some hope. He's got the winning record. He's a winner, Grant. He's a winner.
Wasn't that like the entire list of reasons that Detroit brought Jared Goff in as opposed to drafting a quarterback? Why draft a quarterback who's an unknown when you could get this vet who's had this winning record, and then you bring him in, it's like, oh, it was the Rams.
Didn't work so well.
Oh, this guy has won 0 games without Sean McVay. That's a true stat. I think he's 0-16 without Sean McVay as his quarter. And like, oh,
that's right.
I guess we didn't, sign a bunch of wins. And if you bring Jimmy Garoppolo to the Houston Texans, Houston, you're going to be so disappointed that he's not bringing the wins with him. Sorry.
The only thing I'll touch on with getting back to the contract is it seems to me that what happens in the NFL is a lot of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that the agent and the new team come together and agree on an extension, a renegotiation, or something beforehand where they know that they're going to be able to extend Jimmy Garoppolo and manage that cap hit, spread it out over some years. And Jimmy knows that he should take that because he needs a fresh start in the NFL. He may get cut and have to renegotiate a contract from zero at that point. So it's advantageous to both parties to negotiate that deal and get traded somewhere that he thinks he's a fit.
I just don't see any team looking at him as a franchise quarterback. Like I see a team bringing him in, to as like a
bridge
year-to-year guy or someone, but like hey, we want Jimmy so bad that we're going to trade a draft pick and extend him like the Niners did. No, the Niners are that team. And maybe New England would have been that team, but they're not anymore. So I'm curious to see which team is just like hot and heavy for Jimmy. Like, man,
I'm interested to see if Pittsburgh might be in it.
Could be. All right, let's get back to this game. No Deebo. The Niners are going to have to replace his role in the offense, and that's going to take a village. So let's try to figure out how they're going to do this.
We have to explore it from both angles because, I mean, the last two games, Deebo has had one catch in each game. He's been primarily a running back. So who's going to take over his receptions? Who's going to take over his carries? You can't imagine that the 49ers could lean any heavier on Elijah Mitchell. They are leaning on him about as heavy as you can lean on any one player, not named Deebo.
You can't go to Elijah and be like, like those 27 carries a game you've been we're going to need 37.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Bump it up.
Please. Pump it up, man.
You're young.
You work a little bit, all right?
You got fresh legs.
Yeah. You're young.
So for the run game, I got intrigued with looking back at Jawan Jennings and the Wildcat formations that he had run back in college. And a lot of people were quick to point out that, well, he's not very quick. He's not fast. He's not super athletic. But he wasn't quick, fast, or athletic back then either. I mean, he is the same level. I'm not disparaging the man. He is an NFL player. He's an elite athlete. But he was successful in what he was able to do there. I don't know that he has the speed to get around the edge. I think you'll have to rely on other wide receivers for anything like a jet sweep. But some of the power schemes that Deebo would run, it seems like a natural fit for the body type of Jawan Jennings.
Yeah. I think his targets, he hasn't been getting many recently, but his targets will go to Jennings now. I agree. But I think now let's talk about how they replace him in the running game, because that's a bigger deal now. He's been getting the ball more as a running back. So Elijah Mitchell's terrific. He's not going to be affected. They still need him to carry the ball 25 times. You could say Jeff Wilson Jr. You need more carries, because basically Deebo's been the number 2 running back.
Right.
But
he's been the most efficient running back as well.
No doubt. But Jeff Wilson Jr. and Deebo have nothing in common in terms of their running style. Jeff Wilson Jr. is between the tackles. Deebo, let's be clear. The reason that Deebo's running has been so great is because he's given the Niners what they lost when Mostert went down.
Yes.
Plus, he's better than, but he basically recreates the Mostert effect, which is that so shocking burst to the perimeter on the outside. Unreal. The way you can get to the perimeter and take advantage of that George Kittle block. Because, running between tackles is cool, but your best blocker is George Kittle, who's on the perimeter, and Mostert could take advantage, and Deebo can take advantage, and Wilson can't. He doesn't have that burst. And you know what? Elijah doesn't either. We're talking sprinter burst. Deebo has it. Mostert has it. One more guy, I think, the next closest guy on the team, in my opinion, is JaMychal Hasty.
Ooh.
Who the Niners have misused this year, in my opinion. They use him as a third down back, and he's okay. They throw him passes. They give him little draws between the tackles. I think he has burst to the edge. And I'd like to see him get the ball on first down and see if he can get to the perimeter, because I think he's got a little bit more juice to the outside than even Mitchell does. I'd like to see Hasty get some carries on first and second down.
I like that plan. I think that for Deebo, it really is spectacular. It almost boggles the mind when I see someone have an angle on him trying to get to the edge, attempting to round that corner. I think to myself, no way, he's not going to get it. But he's got these quick steps, this initial burst that is unreal. Obviously, he doesn't have the top end speed of a Raheem Mostert, but his ability in short area quickness is unmatched.
And he can pull away from defenses. So if he's not going 23 miles an hour, he's probably going 22 or 21.
Right.
Pretty fast.
He is certainly fast.
Yeah.
But it's fair to say that Elijah Mitchell doesn't quite have that. You certainly weren't getting that from Trey Sermon before the injury. No. Jeff Wilson Jr. appears to still be rounding back into form. And even when he was at his healthiest, that wasn't really his game, right? You would think that he's going to be more of a power runner in this game. So who can get that edge? I like the idea of getting a few carries to Brandon Aiyuk, getting him around on some jet sweeps, forcing the defense out a little wider, and then giving some additional carries to Jeff Wilson up the gut. Because I do think what Jeff Wilson Jr. brings is important for this game. His whole dark side of his personality, that idea of someone that instills rage in the rest of the offense, that's the type of game this is going to break out to be in my mind. Seattle is going to look to be physically dominant against the 49ers. They're going to try to be the big brother that they have been in games past. And the 49ers need to combat that with equal physicality. And we need tone setters. To me, Jeff Wilson Jr. could be one of those tone setters, running up the gut, getting the hard yards, falling forward, splitting that between he and Mitchell. And then I do think that you could see some not wildcat, but some of the formations where Deebo was in, you could see Juwan Jennings in the backfield, and he may get a couple of the carries.
I like what you're saying with Aiyuk, using him as a ball carrier. You can't just line him up at running back. They used to give him end arounds. They give him like one reverse a game. But I gotta say, I've been kind of disappointed with him with the ball in his hands this year. He does a lot of dancing and running sideways.
Yes,
get the hell up,
a lot of dancing.
What the hell? You didn't do that last year. Get the hell upfield, Brandon. So, yeah, him. But I got a wild one. Okay, a wild card here. So we're talking need to get to the edge. You gotta get to the edge. As a ball carrier, Hasty can do it. I just remembered one other guy on the team who can do it. Trey Lance. Trey Lance. Now, when they used him against Arizona, they only let him run between the tackles, which was still crazy, and they got him hurt. But when other quarterbacks run, usually like Colin Kaepernick or Lamar Jackson, it's to the freaking perimeter, like Deebo. And if you're trying to recreate that part of your offense, give Hasty a shot. But that's what Lance can do, should do, will do. I'm just saying, if you're having trouble, that's a weapon on your bench. Trey Lance.
Got to use all the tools in the tool belt, Kyle.
Can't lose. Because really, it was only a month ago that I felt the Niners would have lost to the Chicago Bears had they not had Deebo Samuel. So I don't know what kind of caliber of opponents the Niners can win without Deebo, who is far and away their MVP.
He's like
able to beat Seattle.
30% of their offense or something like that. It's incredible.
It's incredible. Okay. Couple questions. Over under on Josh Norman DPIs. Ooh, okay. I'm going to set that at 1.5 every week.
I'm going to take the over on that.
Yeah, me too. 1.5. 2. Now, one will be declined, and he may offset one with a forced fumble, which is amazing. Great. Keep doing that.
How many DPIs equal a forced fumble? Because you're taking the good with the bad with Josh Norman. And I honestly have to say, as much as I would have released him after that spat that he had with Cliff Kingsbury, I'm glad that the 49ers didn't because of the turnovers. We've been unable to generate them otherwise. I mean, it's got to be at least a 2-to-1 ratio as far as benefit to the team.
Well, think about it this way. It depends when the defensive pass interference penalty comes, right? Like if it comes on third down, it's an automatic first down and the defense otherwise would have gotten off the field. That's a turnover in a sense. It's not a turnover, but it's a drive extender, which is like essentially
it's a lack of change of possession. Yeah,
it's a lack of change of possession. So in a sense, it's just as impactful as a turnover, I think. Right. So they kind of, depending on the situation, they cancel out. And I've seen a lot of third and whatever go to Josh Norman. Automatic first down. And that's only going to happen more down the stretch when you face better quarterbacks who are more locked into the game plan than what the Niners do poorly.
Who would you guess Seattle would want matched up against Norman for most of the game? DK?
Yeah, I mean, even both of them. You get them, rotate. Let's see what works. But yeah, DK, man, absolutely.
That seems like a total mismatch to me to have DK up on Josh Norman.
The one thing I might think is refs might allow more contact on DK because he's so physical. Tyler Lockett, I mean, if you breathe on him, he's going to fall over. So
right,
yeah.
No, with the big guys, they have to because the big guys are putting their hands on the DBs as well. It's more fighting.
That's right. Sean says Kyle won't play Trey. On a 3-game win streak, media loves him. Jimmy Garoppolo playing good. He sees standings and the loss won't end the season. He will ride with JG. Oh, I gotta hope as a journalist, the idea of them losing to Seattle and not playing Trey Lance is juicy. So I hope you're right, Sean. I mean, I'm not hoping they lose, but if they had to lose, that would be the way I would choose, just for my personal.
It's solid logic from Sean here. You can't really argue with that logic that Kyle would see it that way.
Right. You can argue with the logic that it's the right thing to do, but
correct.
I definitely agree with Sean. He's duped into Kyle's thought process.
Right.
Sacktown Mike says, "Good morning, fellas. Long time no talk. What's up, man? Last time we lost to the Colts, now we are on a 3-game win streak. Why do you think Kyle's running the ball now?" Good question. It's the $1 million question. How did it take this long? How did it come to this? I have a theory.
I have a more outlandish theory, so I'd like to hear yours first.
Well, I mean, the Niners have been fairly up front this year that their number one goal is pumping up Jimmy Garoppolo's trade value. That their plan for this year is to start Jimmy and then trade him in the offseason and start Trey Lance. So I think the first half of the year, they were really trying to showcase Jimmy. Look at how great Jimmy is. Watch Jimmy throw the ball. Watch how he can win the games. And they go 3-5. And then it's like, okay, well, now we got Jimmy, your game manager now. Now I mean, the pretense is over. We're going to go back to not really trusting you, and we're going to win if we can get you 40 handoffs. And now it's like they didn't want to do that. But now they've revealed their hand like, okay, well, this is how we have to win. We like Jimmy, but we don't trust Jimmy. And he's really not worth that much. Like if you can recreate our run game, he might be someone you would like. But otherwise, he's very much a function of our running backs. And that's what I think has happened.
My theory is far more far-fetched in that I believe, much like everyone else, that Kyle Shanahan watches our program here, watches my channel, where I so fervently pled with him to get back to his identity of running the ball. And clearly something you and I said, something I said on my channel got through to the man, and he realized what the 49ers identity should be and is.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's probably the case. Don says no team goes cross-country, plays Monday night, red eyes Tuesday morning, plays with energy the next Sunday afternoon. If Niners play physical from kickoff, they will win. It's a good point. It's a good point. It's not a far flight for the Niners. They shouldn't be exactly jet-lagged.
No, the only thing that you'd say to that is there's some added motivation for Seattle. They are in the middle of a collapse, and now they get to play against a division rival. You would think pride would step in, that there's going to be some team meetings that happen, that Russell Wilson pulls some guys aside and rallies the troops, unless the dysfunction is really, really, really running deep. And you'll be able to see that right away. If Seattle comes out flat, then we are witnessing the end of an era.
I love how people are looking for the Niners' hidden advantages over Seattle. The biggest advantage the Niners have over Seattle is that Seattle freaking sucks.
Yeah.
That's the biggest advantage the Niners have. And that they don't suck. So they should win. That's why they should win, because Seattle freaking sucks. And if they lose, oh my God, we're going to have a field day. The whole world will. So don't lose. That's the key to this game. Don't freaking lose to the Seahawks, who suck.
Please don't lose.
Yeah. Fossey says, good morning football today, said Jimmy has been balling out of his mind. Why is national media's perception of Jimmy so crazy? I don't know. It seems like everyone is in on it, on trying to build up a trade value for them that doesn't exist. I don't know what it is. What do you think?
I think that, national media likes to have storylines. They like to have the worst to first. They like to ride the hot teams. And San Francisco is on a win streak. There's no doubt. And there aren't very many dominant teams in the league this year. Everybody is suffering from a little bit of unknown identity. There are very few playoff teams that you could say, oh, they're definitely going to take it this year. There's no clear front runner. So they're riding the hot hand and pointing out that, the 49ers are riding a win streak. And then it doesn't hurt when you're trying to spin a national story to have a handsome subject matter, to have Jimmy Garoppolo's jawline up on the screen.
I think that's a big thing. He's a media darling. The media really likes him because he's, charming and handsome. But more importantly, he's like football royalty. He came from New England.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, he's been on two really important franchises. New England, which is New England, and the Niners, which, they haven't been the Niners since the 90s, but still they are the Lakers. They are the West Coast franchise in the NFL. The Rams don't matter as much. The Seahawks, they are the Niners are West Coast football. So he's a very important person in terms of the media's eyes, and I think they pump him up. I don't think the NFL looks at him I don't think teams like GMs and coaches are looking at him being like, man, that's the kind of guy we need on our team. No, Kyle makes it work. He's decent, but in the media's eyes, he's royalty.
Yes, he was born of royal bloodlines in New England, hailing from Tom Brady's tree.
Yes.
And they just go back to the storylines that came out in 2019. They just pull from that, which was, let's be very honest, a magical season, save for the end of it. It was a fantastic year for the Niners, and the media ate it up in 2019. They didn't know what to make of 2020, but as soon as you have a flash of it, they latch back on to that storyline because it is a Cinderella type of season that they're pointing back to in 2019.
Nick says, I firmly believe that if Jimmy looked like Nick Mullins, his perception would be so different. He's probably gone by now. There's that, but I think we really get on Jimmy Garoppolo for being handsome. I'm extremely handsome, so I want to put that to the side because it's not his fault.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? Oh, so are you, Rob? Look at Rob. Look at that face. Look at that face. what I want to say here is I think it's very much about the New England thing. It's the fact that he was drafted by New England and didn't play. He was a mystery. I mean, he was like, you know what I'm saying? What if he had been drafted by Cleveland? What if he'd been drafted by Cleveland and had to play as a rookie, like Colt McCoy? Would anyone think anything of him, or would he just be another guy who was a second-round pick who flopped in Cleveland? You know, I think the New England thing's a big deal.
He was handpicked by Bill Belichick and only allowed, this is the national story, only allowed to leave because of dysfunction between he and Tom Brady and Robert Kraft, and he was forced into this trading away of Jimmy Garoppolo. Otherwise, he would have been the heir apparent. That's still the storyline.
Isn't there a bizarre world where Colt McCoy gets drafted by the Patriots, sits for 4 years behind Tom Brady, and is looked at as some special handpicked heir apparent talent and goes somewhere and actually is good because he looks decent now.
Yes.
And he got written off at about 24 because he failed on the Browns. I mean, a lot of guys fail on the Browns. So I think a lot of it is the whole not playing for a long time and being the guy who's groomed by the best of the best.
Yes.
Right. Which team will win over the edges in this game? Which team will win over the edges? I don't know. The Niners.
I mean, if the question is who's got the better edge rushers, who's going to win on the edges, I would think the 49ers, but I am worried about this wide nine and Russell Wilson. He does tend to find some 4-lane highways to run through every now and then. Even though he's lost a step, it doesn't seem to matter. So I hope that they rush as a unit and contain him.
Guys, we got to start going a lightning round because I need to catch a flight. But we can finish that. We can finish. Sean says, Grant, why does Carroll own K? He was on Super Bowl staff with Mike in 94, best offense. And no, he was not on the Super Bowl staff in 1994. He came in 95. Best offense and D in the league. He knows their system as well as West Coast offense and knows how Shanny's prep and attack. No, why does Kyle use Pete's D? That's a good question. Why does Carroll own Kyle Shanahan? Carroll usually does a good job of he did a good job against Harbaugh too. Once he sees something for a while, he's a good defensive coach. Kind of like Saleh.
He's a great defensive coach.
Kind of like Saleh. Yeah. Probably an overrated head coach, but
I think people understand someone like Pete Carroll, who is as confident as he is, as great of a defensive coach as he is, understands he can bait Kyle into getting away from what Kyle does so well. He can present a defense that Kyle believes he can take advantage of that actually puts him in a worse position.
Yeah. Thanks, Sean. Sean Dunn says Kyle had no choice but to run against the Rams. Huge underdog at 3-5 and limit Rams possessions. Assumed tight game, but instead it woke the team up and Levi's. Fair.
Very fair.
Is there anything else? Yes. Modala says, late to the party. Love the show, guys. Go Niners, but that plus 125 Seattle line is too sweet to pass up. We'll use the winnings to buy more super chats. Hilarious, but I feel you. Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance together on the field in the Wildcat formation. What do you think, Grant? Yeah, let's get Jimmy handing off to Trey, please. Or Trey handing off to Jimmy.
Oh, no.
All right, 2 more. So one of the things that I think Niner fans are concerned about is this home field advantage that Seattle has. It's so loud up there. They always win up there. I've been up there. I sit in the press box, which is like double pane windows. You don't really hear it, but you feel it. The place rocks. It's almost like, after big time touchdowns, it feels like an earthquake. And I think it actually registers on the Richter scale sometimes. I'm not really worried about that this week though, for a few reasons. Are you?
I mean, I am, because I don't sit behind the plates of glass. I sit out there in the stadium. They don't let me in the press box, unfortunately, not just yet. But it is crazy. And so I have PTSD. I have the memories of going to the NFC Championship game in 2013 and just feeling it in my chest to where it messes with your breathing rhythm. It messes with your heartbeat. It's a very strange sensation to be a part of. But I will say that as I was searching for and looking at tickets, there are a lot still remaining on sites.
Yeah, I mean, I'm used to facing to going to these games when the Niners face the Seahawks, when the Seahawks are on the verge of making the playoffs, and the whole Pacific Northwest is in a frenzy, and they're really excited about football and the Seahawks. And I'm guessing it's not like that right now. They're freaking 3-8. How loud could they possibly be about an offense that's on the field for like 23 minutes a game? I mean, really. So there's that. I just don't feel like that. I've never been up there to see a bad Seahawks team, but I think it's going to be different.
I hope
There's
so.
also
I mean, it is a bad team. It has been a bad team for a while, and the fan base is panicking. If you go look at any of the Seattle sites and watch Seattle YouTube, it is nastier than it was for the 49ers when they were in meltdown mode.
Yeah, I wish I could be instigating that up there, but it seems like they're more in like tear it down mode than like let's go cheer for a touchdown of a 3-8 team. I don't really see that. And then there's the other thing. I don't know if this is still true, but a few weeks ago I saw a stat that the road teams had a better record than the home teams in the NFL. And I think that was like it was that way last season too, that the road teams had like one more win than the home team. So I think it's possible that COVID erased the home field advantage. It's possible. It's possible.
That's a weird phenomenon. It was totally understandable when fan bases were primarily out of the stadiums. The fact that it's carried forward into this year is something that's interesting, and you wonder if people will study it in future years. Maybe now that we're sort of out of the heat of COVID, people are traveling more, so fans are going to games, much like I'm traveling up to Seattle. But it's a weird phenomenon that the home field advantage is being eliminated, and Vegas still gives those 3 points to the home field automatically. Will they have to change that going forward?
Used to be 4 points, I think, for Seattle that they would give them. Now it's like, well, if that 3-point home field advantage doesn't exist anymore, then the Niners should win by 6 this weekend. Let's see what they do.
Hey, I'm
Speaking
up for
of
it.
the Niners winning, this is a team that went 3-5. At one point, they lost 4 of 5. Can they run the table now? They've won 3 in a row.
When you look at the remaining games on the 49ers schedule, it does seem as if all of them are winnable. All 3 of their home games remaining set up against beatable teams. The Falcons, who are the other ones that are on
Houston.
there? Oh, the Texans. Yeah.
There's 2 more. That's it. Atlanta and Houston are there. They have 4 road games and 2 home games remaining.
But when you go on the road, I mean, there are some rough games. Next week sets up to be one that will be challenging. After this physical matchup against a Seattle team where you would hope they come out with the victory, flying all the way into Cincinnati against a high-flying offense, that's going to be a tough one. That may be the toughest one remaining on the schedule. And then they come back for Atlanta and then head out to Tennessee. Is that correct?
That's correct. And then they have Houston at home, and then they go to the Rams for the final game of the season.
It sets up all of those individual games strike me as beatable. The 49ers should be able to beat the Seahawks this weekend. Would you agree with that they should be able to manage time of possession?
They better beat the Seahawks. Absolutely. Yes.
And then the Bengals, that one is the tougher one for me to predict because of their offense and how that might match up against our secondary. But they have a very suspect defense. If the 49ers can get back to their run-first identity, that also seems like a winnable game, although a close matchup.
The thing about the Bengals defense, it's ranked 6th in fewest points allowed. So the thing about the Bengals is they are a dark horse. That is a team that is a contender right now. They have Joe Burrow, who's playing as well as any. I mean, everyone's talking about Mac Jones, about Joe Burrow. And he's got Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Joe Mixon. That's the toughest game left on the Niners schedule, and I'm going to it. Going to Cincinnati.
Nice.
Me. Yep. Mostly for the
CNC.
chili. Just kidding.
That will be a tough one. Then they come home against Atlanta. That's a very winnable game, but it sets up as a potential trap game, right? I mean, 2019, let's think back to that Atlanta Falcons game where last second victory, Julio Jones at the goal line. I know they don't have Julio anymore, and they don't have the wide receiver they drafted to replace him, but they are still a dangerous team, and the 49ers are still a team that I wonder if they have the consistency to win those games that they need to win, that they should win.
Right. So, look, they should beat the Seahawks. Not saying they should beat Cincinnati. They could. That's a tough one. They should beat Atlanta. But then Tennessee's interesting. That's a tough one because it's a road game on Thursday night. That's hard. And then, Tennessee's in shambles now, but what are they going to look like then? They're a good team usually. So that's another game the Niners, you could say right now it looks like they should win. And then finally, like the last week against the Rams, the Niners have the Rams number, but will Odell Beckham finally be integrated in the offense? Will Matthew Stafford be back on a roll?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily just a an easy win.
It's not. And if you look at both, there are two games that the opposing teams may have their backs against the wall and be a caged animal. The Titans are certainly one of them. They could be getting healthy when the 49ers come into town. Short week. The 49ers are the traveling team. Derrick Henry could be back. It's right before Christmas, and so you could imagine players being slightly distracted, thinking about family and everything that goes into Christmas time. So that seems like it sets up as a difficult game. And then the Rams could absolutely have their backs against the wall. Everyone, when they made those moves for Von Miller, and what's that?
The Seahawks do right now.
Yes, right.
That's 3. Yeah.
Right.
That's 3.
So that's a tough matchup. And if the 49ers are still rolling at that point, the tendency is to get a bit lax. If the 49ers get on a streak and they are winning, that's why running the table is so difficult, because eventually you start to believe the hype. You start to think you are that much better of a team, and you don't take the opponent as seriously, and you drop one that you shouldn't have. 49ers can't really afford to do that for the remainder of the season. They could go 4-2 and make the playoffs. I still think 10-7 gets them there, but you want to get in on a high note. You don't want to have a 2-game losing streak or end the season on a loss to the Rams. So to me, it's important that the 49ers mentally attempt to run this and play it like it's a playoff game every week.
I'm going to say it this way. I think they should win this week without Deebo. And if Deebo comes back next week, they can beat the Bengals. And if Deebo doesn't miss any more time, he's the MVP of the league. I think they can run the table. It can be done. When you have the best player in your sport, helps. So, yeah, it can be done. Yes.
It does. Would you see a likely scenario that if we win this game without Deebo, that because of the importance of Deebo, they actually rest him one more week, knowing that it would be okay to drop one game against a good team? No. Rush him back.
No. I think he's coming back. I think he's going to play against the Bengals. Maybe it'll be the wrong call, but I don't think you can. He's trying to get paid. He wants to play. I think
that's a good
probably
point.
Even hard to keep him out one week.
That's a great point. That man is looking at $20+ million a year. So he is hungry.
He can almost touch it. All right, Rob, it's time for me to go catch a flight. This was a hell of a show. Thank you for doing it an hour early, and thank you everyone for watching.
Absolutely.
Next time I see you and you see me, I'll be in the Pacific Northwest where it's going to be snowing. Looking forward to that.
Ooh, I will be there as well. And I will be on at noon today on my channel, bringing on Silverado Kev, who everyone here should know. So come join the party.
Veteran of the channel. Love Silverado Kev. I'll be at the airport. Maybe I'll catch it, man. Have a great show and see you guys. See you everyone.